Hello, I'm Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of Winona. Today we're on the grounds of the Watkins Manor. At one time there were very formal gardens around this home, especially on the west side of the house. They were extremely formal. And after Florence Watkins, the owner of the home, passed away in the mid-50s, these gardens slowly faded away. Years of neglect turned the area into an eyesore. A while ago, the Watkins Company donated the necessary funds to revitalize the West Gardens, and Neil Anderson, a landscape designer, was hired to bring the gardens back to a semblance of what they once were. Today, the residents and their families and community members are having a garden party to celebrate the results. Let's take a look at what the original gardens were like, what they look like after being left alone for 45 years, and best of all, what they look like today.
The construction of the Watkins home began in 1924 and was complete in 1927 for the Paul Watkins family. The landscaping for the home began immediately. Holman Olson landscape architects from Minneapolis were hired to design the formal gardens. Huge trees were brought in, hedges were planted, steps and stone paths were installed, a pond was dug, and unique to most gardens in Winona, ornamentation was featured throughout the grounds. Garden ornamentation such as urns, stone benches, and statuary were very popular in the early 20th century America. This pleasure was reserved only for the very rich, however. Ornamental gardens petered out during World War II and remained unfashionable until the last 10 or 15 years, when we have seen a major resurgence. In today's gardens, ornaments and greenery go hand in hand in everyone's garden, rich or poor. With gardening now the #1 hobby in America, a garden isn't complete without some well-chosen accent among the plantings. In 1932, when Florence Watkins felt the gardens looked their best, she had the well-known photographer Kenneth Wright from St. Paul, Minnesota, come to Winona and take these pictures. West Gardens on the Watkins property radiated from a reflection pond, which was centered in a sunken garden with vine-covered stone walls 2 feet high all around, and steps on each side. In front of the south steps, or 8th Street side, allowances were made for a large elm tree. Beyond the sunken garden, on this side, were 4 life-size statues of the 4 seasons. In front of these statues was a large stone cauldron set on a wellhead and smaller stone vases set on pedestals around the stone wall. On the west end of this garden stood another stone cauldron with 2 pedestal vases on either side. A lovely spot, perhaps, for a marriage proposal. In fact, this is where Florence Watkins' granddaughter was proposed to, and today she has this lovely piece standing in her own garden in Oklahoma. The 4 seasons also still exist in her garden. The steps on the east end of the garden led to the driveway which came from under the porte cochere. From here we see more steps which led to a patio and then into the Great Hall. Today, the doors from the Great Hall still lead across the patio. The Matoe stone at our feet has been leveled and smoothed over for the new residents of the Watkins Manor. In 1958, the home was turned into a rest home. In the early 1960s, a large addition was added to the home. Unfortunately, this addition cut off half of the elegant gardens. The garden stood unattended from that time on until the spring of 2002. On a beautiful day in May, I met with Neil Anderson from Land Spirit Design, who tells us how he will try to incorporate what he has left of the Watkins garden and turn it into a garden that will fit the needs of the new residents.
And he has been assigned to put this garden back together to sort of the way it was when the Watkins lived here.
That's right.
You have quite a task ahead of you.
Oh, we sure do. I mean, we found pictures from Paul Watkins dating back to 1932 that kind of show the way it used to be. And taking those pictures, we tried to transform this garden into hopefully to the same feel that it had back then. And we have a few unique qualities to this garden that we're doing to better fit the manor house and what the people and the residents here would like. For example, if I can, just show you around a little bit.
Sure.
The garden boxes here are raised bed garden boxes, and they're wheelchair accessible. So that's why we wanted to get the height about almost 3 feet. So it'll be easy to reach from a wheelchair. Especially older people have always had a tendency to garden, whether it be a small plot in the back of their house. If they're a farmer coming in from, the field, they really know the ground and the earth, and they're really earth-oriented. So that's why we really wanted to do the garden boxes here. And, right next to it, too, we have a play area. So when the residents might have grandchildren or something here, they can play out here. We'll have a couple picnic tables and a place maybe to do some barbecuing. So anyway, we're trying to make this into definitely a much more usable space. And then one of the highlights, and this is kind of new for me too, is we're going to have a putting green back here. Hopefully some of the residents that might have had an inkling for golf will definitely have the opportunity here, to keep up on practicing, at least their putting. We'll have a formal garden. In the center here we'll have, as you can see, we already started the planting, and we have some of the bushes more in geometrical shapes. And then in the center of that we'll have a fountain, a large fountain, with a woman carrying 2 vases and the water cascading down from there. So that'll kind of be the formal garden, the formal centerpiece, because originally in the center here it was a sunken garden and a sunken reflecting pool. So again, we're trying to utilize some of those same principles that we found in the old photographs, into this new idea. We're trying to create this area here with the flagstones that we're cleaning off now. We're finding more and more. And the pictures originally had the flagstones with grass, clumps growing up through it, and that was the original feel of the backyard space here. So we're trying to keep some of that. But originally, if you look here, you see the steps in the far end of this garden. Well, that was halfway, and it also went, from there that way as far as you can see here. So it's definitely half the size it was. It's real hard to mask a large building like that. And so our main focus here is from the building out, though. So when the residents are sitting, in their rooms or, looking outside, if it's a nice day and they think, oh, it's just beautiful out there, I want to go outside. So that's the big draw here, is not necessarily hiding the building, but making the focal point out this way for the residents. And this area, too, what we're trying to do in the center here is maybe make this more into either a musical or a theatrical place where, if the high school students or, grade school kids want to come over, put on plays, then we'll have areas below the steps here for chairs that the residents can come out and sit and watch. So, again, we're just trying to make this into definitely a much more usable space out here.
By the end of the summer, Neil was finished with a new look for the West Garden. The wellhead that once held the marble cauldron with the carved cherubs now is the staging platform. Stacy Hughes is the first performer on the old wellhead as she sings on the new stage for the garden party.
We're back at the garden today, and now the garden is totally all finished, and Neil Anderson's with us. He's the landscaper. Hi again, Neil.
Hi, Joyce. How are you?
Well, I'm fine, thanks. Your garden turned out very lovely, but are you satisfied with it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we had a lot of help, and we did a great job. My team just came in, and we worked hard. We definitely had a design to follow. We had some, specific ideas of what we wanted to achieve, balancing the, bringing some of the old formal elements in the garden into, the new design, incorporating some of the, in like the enabling garden, front entryway, a new walkway in. Yeah, I think it turned out very well.
Do the different garden areas have themes?
Yeah, we wanted to, again, in the center, stick with the formal elements, the formal garden. That's where we have the statue in the center.
Now tell me about the plantings in the center where you have the lovely fountain.
To start with, we have 4 roses. They were donated by Dr. Sid Hughes in memory of his wife, Colleen.
and they're red roses, and they're shrub roses, and we want to keep, that's more of a formal element in a lot of gardens, is the rose. And around that we have, square shapes, and then, a circular center around the fountain. And, we'd use different plantings just to create more of hedge forms and, those formal elements. And then, underneath that is pea gravel, so, it's easy to maintain and, looks nice for years to come. Up the center, again, is the formal elements with the small statues of the cherubs playing musical instruments. Then from there, going both ways, we start going into less formal areas, into the raised beds for the wheelchair-accessible residents here, and to the putting green behind me.
The less formal area behind us on the south side of the garden contains a 3-hole putting green, the planting boxes, which are currently full of beautiful flowers and vegetables, all planted and tended by the residents who continue to have a love of gardening. The play area stands next to the garden boxes. These areas are quite different from the original formal garden. However, they offer wonderful practical opportunities for the current residents. The putting green, which now offers the residents a little recreational activity, stands almost directly over the area where the Four Seasons once stood in another era.
Neil, how much does this differ actually from the formal garden the way it was originally?
It differs a lot because when they added the new addition on, in the 60s and 70s, they tore up about half the garden. So what we had to do is we had to work with, what was remaining and try to bring in these new elements with, the old sections that were still here. And we wanted to keep that old feel, the old traditional sunken garden in the center, and, use, again, what was here to build upon, I guess. So a lot of it was gone. It was one interesting story we had is when we were digging the formal garden in the center here, we uncovered parts of the reflecting pool. And it was interesting to find the old stones and, some of the old bottom that used to be, in the center here. So it was kind of fun to start uncovering, some of the old pieces from the past. We found one chair section that was kind of interesting, one old stone bench. We found, a broken part of that. So it was kind of fun to find that, and, everybody stopped working and came over, and we, tried to figure out, where was this placed originally in the old plan? So it was really fun to, try to, say, okay, now this was over here and this was here. So how can we use this in those ideas in our plan? And, anyway, so we did work with, some of the, elements that were still here, but yet we went far beyond that and used to continue all the way to the terrace on the other side of the building. So you would stand on the terrace and look out this long, formal garden.
Tell me about the enabling garden. What is that all about?
Well, it's not a new idea. It's been out for a while, but it's more of bringing the handicap, accessibility of a garden and joining them together, so the residents who might have a hard time either just bending over or in a wheelchair, they can still garden, they can still get out, and they can still do, the activities that, they once did. One of the residents here at the Watkins Manor is a retired farmer, and he just loved it when we started putting the dirt in, and he came out and he saw the first weed, and he was right over there in his wheelchair, and he said, yep, and he told us, how he used to plant potatoes and corn, and it just really worked out well. And I think the residents really enjoy that they don't have to lean over or get the hose out and just dig up a piece of dirt. So this way, that's up, it's at a right height for them, and it's nice and clean around them. They don't have to worry about tripping over anything, and it just again brings the garden to them. What's nice about the garden box is that they're up high enough that it's easy to come in, change it around. Next year, it's always nice to put different plants in where, we don't want to plant the tomatoes in the same place the tomatoes were. So, we can just rotate the crops in their little garden boxes.
This has been Joyce Woodworth at the Watkins Manor. Please join me again next week. Till then, enjoy the Spirit of Winona.